Hello CRT kids, this is Mrs. Jones. This is one of my very first videos with you. Today we're going to talk about how you actually mathematically do the calculations for mixing paint. I know that you guys use cups and sticks while you're in the shop, but if you're ever in a situation where you need to measure it without those items, I'm going to show you how to mathematically do that. So this is an example, totally made up example. You are mixing NCP 270-271. You need 2 quarts of sprayable material. This product is mixed 2 parts primer to half part reducer and 1 part hardener. It says how much of each ingredient do you need to mix together. So the very first thing we got to do is take our 2 quarts. That's how much sprayable material we need. 2 quarts, and we got to turn it into ounces. Right? So we know from last week, if you did the assignment, that there's 32 ounces in a quart. So we would multiply that by 32. 2 times 32 means that we need 64 total sprayable ounces of material when we're all done. The next thing that we're going to do is set up and solve a proportion comparing the total sprayable material to the amount of primer that we need. So you set your proportion up kind of like this, and I put some little hints in there that on this side, we're going to put everything that has to deal with the mixing ratio. On the other side, on the right-hand side, we're putting all of our measurable units like ounces. We'll go over there. So for sprayable, this is the total sprayable number of parts that goes right here on the top. If we look at our thing, it says we need 2 parts of primer, a half part of reducer, and 1 part of hardener. So we add those all together. 2 plus half plus 1 would be 3.5 total sprayable parts goes there. Now how many of those parts are just for primer? There's 2 parts that are just for primer here. So this goes, the 2 goes underneath there. On the other side of our proportion is our measurement. The only measurement we know is we know that we need 64 total ounces. So that 64 goes right there. And we do not know how many ounces are going to be primer. So the way we solve this little proportion is something that we always love to do, which is cross multiplication. So you cross multiply 64 times 2 and divide it by 3.5. So what I'm saying is we would cross multiply this direction, and then we would divide that answer by 3.5. So we can get out our calculators, and we're allowed to use those for speed now. We go 64 times 2 divided by 3.5. And I want you to round these answers to the nearest whole number. This was my answer, 36.57. So my nearest whole number would be 37, right? So we need 37 ounces of primer. I'll move it over here in a second. 37 ounces of primer. That's what that first part of that, or second part actually, solves. So we're moving on to our next step, and we're going to make another proportion. Our total number sprayable parts is still 3.5. But how many of those parts are just reducer? If we look up to the top up here, it says a half part reducer. So we're going to put 0.5 in this spot here. And again, we know that we need 64 total sprayable ounces, but we do not know how many ounces of reducer. So we solve it the same way. You cross multiply and then you divide by 3.5. So I'm going to take 64 times 0.5 divided by 3.5. There's my, and I'm wanting you to round those to the nearest whole number. So we're going to say that we need 9 ounces of reducer. Okay, the last ingredient we need to figure out is the hardener. So, and that's just an easy subtraction. We know that we need a total of 64 ounces. But we know that 37 of those ounces are going to be from the primer. And we also know that 9 ounces are going to be from the reducer. The amount that is left is going to be what is going into the hardener, or going to be harder. So if I do that subtraction, 64 minus 36 minus 9, I get 18 ounces. And that means that there's going to be 18 ounces of hardener. So total together, we would be mixing 37 ounces of primer, 9 ounces of reducer, and 18 ounces of hardener. I hope this video will help you answer the little quiz questions. There is a Google quiz. You can go ahead and try those. Most of the questions are multiple choice. Thank you for listening today, and do your best. Thanks. Bye.